Sir, Suresh Kumar, sir, now you start the program, sir.
Yes, sir. Very good morning to one and all present here. Today is a wonderful day. We all are gathered here to attend an international webinar on the topic an overview on drafting and publishing research articles in Index Journal. As we all belongs to teaching fraternity, though our primary job is ensuring teaching and learning process, research is as important as teaching. If you come to research, it is very important to understand what is research and how to carry out research and publish the research findings. If you come to submitting the research findings, there are so many ways to submit our research findings. You can submit in the form of thesis, you can submit the same research findings in the form of papers in the conferences, and you can submit the same as an article in various journals. So this prompted us to conduct an international webinar on the topic called Overview on Drafting and Publishing Research Articles in Index Journals. So I would like to take this opportunity today to welcome all the gatherings for this wonderful program. I am really honored to deliver the welcome address in this great occasion. First of all, I would like to welcome our resource person, Dr. M.I. Mujahid Hilal, Senior Lecturer, Marketing Management, Southeastern University, Sri Lanka. It is my privilege, sir, on behalf of Sri Sanjay Babu Jain College, Binju, to welcome you in this wonderful program. And next, it's my privilege to welcome our principal, Professor Dr. V. Navajodi, who is constantly motivating us and extend his hand to conduct this international webinar. I would like to welcome our Vice Principal, Dr. N. Suyata Madam, for this program. And I would like to welcome all participants and teaching fraternity of various other colleges, as well as the teaching fraternity of SCP Jain College, who gathered here for this wonderful program. It's my privilege to welcome our chief guest today. And now let me introduce our chief guest. Our chief guest, as I discussed earlier, M.A. Mujahid Hilal, Senior Lecturer. He graduated PhD from Cochin University, Kerala, and he has been, at present, he is working as a HOD, and he has been in various positions previously. He has so many scholarship, fellowship under his belt. I just read out only few. He is having so many other things. As our time is not permitting us, let me cut short with only 2 to 3 scholarships of our research, chief guest. The first one is he is awarded Cultural Heritage Program Scholarship by Government of India, and he also got the scholarship of Commonwealth Professional Fellow Tenable in UK 2013, and he got the Vice Chancellor Award in 2018, Most Outstanding Research of Faculty of Management and Commerce. So we are really honored to have you, sir. It's my privilege to hand over the session to you. Please, you carry on, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay. So, well, right. So, this is actually the program on the overview of drafting research papers and publishing in index journals. So I'm really honored to be here as a resource person for this international workshops or webinar on the overview of drafting research papers and publishing on the index journals. So first of all, I would like to thank for these organizers, the principal and the organizers of this international program, and inviting me as a resource person for this session. So first of all, I would like to, so because we all under the pandemic, right, world situations, and we have to pray for the normalcy as early as possible, right? So having said that, so I can directly go to the program right now. So actually, in the last couple of days, I was one of the resource person for the program in the one of the universities in Delhi, right? And so I was requested to do such a programs on research methodology and how to choose a journal for publication, right? So today we are going to talk on or discuss on the drafting the research paper, right? And how we can publish it in index journals. So this is really, how you can choose the journals, right? So that's what it means, right? So I would like to share my screen right now. Okay. So from that onwards, you can listen to my presentation. Oh, sorry. Hope you all can, see my screen now, right? So this is the drafting research papers and choosing a right journal for publication. So I think so the organizers have given right good good introduction, right? So it can also be said an exaggeration, right, of my profile, right? So they have given a good explanation about me, right? So therefore I don't want to talk about those things right now. Since we have a limited time, we have to, right? So I can directly go to the slides. Okay. So now see, what is a research paper and what are the types of research paper is available, right? So when you look at the types of research papers, right? So types of research papers, you can see on the screen, you have a research note, right? So working papers, right? Professional conference papers, right? And journal articles and books, right? So sometime we may wonder, right? So what are the differences between these types of research papers, right? So now say research note. So what do you mean by research not? So when you look at some journals, right? So they are publishing a research note, right? So the research notes also, right, gone through the several review process, like what the research, papers gone through. Okay. So some journals they are publishing the research notes along with, right, so research papers, right? So I can say some example like tourism journals, right? So published by Vienna University, right? Vienna University. So they are publishing research note that is also actually indexed in, right, Scopus and Web of Science databases. So therefore they also published, right, they also publish the research note, right? So what is research note, right? So we should know, we should understand the difference between the research paper and the research note, right? So if you look at the research papers, so the journal may ask you to prepare your paper between the 15 to 20 pages, right? So but normally what will happen for the research note, it's about just 1 to 5 pages document, right? But the same stages, same content should be there, right, as in the research paper. Okay, so now see short, it may be the for publications in the academic or technical journal, right, for the benefit of research sponsors, right? So now see, now we may have, right, we might have taken a research grant from our institutions, right? So the purpose of the research grant is to publish, is to do a research that contribute to the national development, right, or regional development, and it should be published in journals, right? So for that purpose we are publishing the research notes. Okay. So now see this working paper. So working paper is something that, so the other difference that I can emphasize here for the research note. So it's, really focused on the findings, right? So rather than, looking at explaining the methodology, review of literature, right, research issues, right? So here what we are doing is we mainly focus on the research findings, right? So that is to be published, right? So the other one is the working paper, right? So you all might have, heard about what is working paper, right? So the working paper is a tentative presentation of research findings, right? So it's, we wanted to get some feedbacks, right, with regard to the research currently going on. So then what we are doing is we are getting we are publishing as a working paper so that you can get more and more feedbacks and you can incorporate it and publish it in a good journal, right? So the working paper is also there, right? So we are inviting the comments on the analysis, right? Because sometimes, we may do certain analysis which may not be appropriate. So therefore we wanted to get some, feedbacks on the analysis part. So you are publishing it as a working paper, right? So the other one is the research paper is the professional or conference paper, right? So this is, now everywhere you can find this one, right? So we are presenting a paper, right? So I also have done, many presentations, maybe more than 60 presentations, all over the many countries, right? Many countries, even in Sri Lanka also, right? So we are presenting a paper, right? So presenting a paper in the sense even the presented paper also can also be published in any journals, right? So you can present it and you can get more and more feedbacks on what is really happening for the I mean the about the research, right? And then you can incorporate it in future and you can publish it, right? So some journals, what they do is if you presented this paper, right, so you have to entirely rewrite and submit the paper, right? So that is how they asked, right? So accordingly what you have to do, so we have to rewrite and submit it, right? But in some journals you can always, mention, right? So this paper is presented there, right? And it has been the new things, new analysis method, new methodology have been adopted for this and published in this journals, right? So some journals some journals wants some, indication saying that, the paper has already been presented in the conference. We have to mention it. Okay. So the fourth one, you can see the journal article, right? So journal articles, now see, you are doing many journals papers, right? So everyone now, wants to publish their research works. So we are submitting a research paper that maybe exceeding the research note, right? So the length of the paper may exceed the research note. So now see, research notes just, 1 to 5 pages, but if you look at this journal article, so it may have maybe 10 to 15 pages, or sometime, it exceeds even 15 pages also, right? Some journals, they instruct the authors to include or to confine the pages within 10 or 15 pages, like, right? So that is journal article. Okay. So now see the book. If you look at a book, what will happen is in the books, so the entire research, because, when you do a research, you have to go through many process, right? Stages of the process. So what you had to do, so you had to book, right? So the book can be published the entire process. Now see, for example, PhD thesis, right? So a master's dissertation, right? So what we are doing is some publishers are asking to publish the particular dissertation as a book, right? So it has more value than the journal article even, right? So you can publish everything what you have done in your research. Okay, so now see, when I look at these objectives of the paper, right? So now see research paper, you can see whatever the research papers, right? So that may be in the form of a research note, right? Journal article, conference papers, right? Or professional papers, right? Or the books, right? So there must be an objectives, right? So here the objective, the paper's objective, not the research objective. Okay, so what is the objective of the paper, or what is the purpose of the paper, that we have to explain here, right? So now see, the purpose of the paper may be to explore the topic, right? So the purpose of the paper may be to explore the topic, right? So that may be, see, the tentative or incomplete one, right? So points the way more refined research on the topic, right? So what we are exploring, right? So the objective of the paper is to explore the topic, right? So sometime, we may submit a papers, right? So we call it as concept papers, right? So what we are really doing in the concept papers, we are really exploring the topic, right? So that maybe, with the help of review of literature, right? So we are writing it, right? And how you can further, right? Further uh, go ahead with this study, right? So you're explaining, right? So exploring the topic also might be one of the objective or one of the purpose of the paper, right? So the second objective is descriptive, right? So here what we're doing, describing the studies on the topic, the name of the nature of the sample, the methodology adapted, etc. So that is also one objective of the paper, right? It should be descriptive one, right? So you are explaining about the nature of the sample, the methodology adapted, right? How you have done it, right? So everything's may be included there, right? So the third purpose is explanatory, right? So what is explanatory? So really, the research that involve, right, with variables, right? So as you all know, right, so there may be two types of variable, not two types, right? There are other types also, right? So maybe independent variable, right? Dependent variable. So it's explanatory, right? So you are developing hypothesis, right, based on your theoretical framework. So that is explanatory, right? So what is theoretical framework here? So explaining the variables, I mean the dependent and independent variables, and also you are explaining the relationship between these variables, right? So that is called explanatory studies, right? So that could be one of the purpose of the paper, right? So the other one, now see, testing, right? So testing also could be a purpose, right? So now see, based on your conceptual framework, right? So you are establishing the relationship between the variable, and you are deriving or formulating the hypothesis, right? So that hypothesis that you have to test it, right? So using various statistical techniques, you are testing the hypothesis, right? So that also could be a objectives or purpose of a paper, right? So the other one, the last objective of the paper is a prescriptive or action oriented, right? So now see, we have to conduct a study, right? We have to conduct a study in order to recommend certain policies to the top authority, right? So it's an action oriented study, right? So that for that also there may be a paper, right? So while considering these all these papers, right, so we must know before publishing a paper, right? So we should know what should be included in the paper, right? So as you all know, right, we can divide into three parts, right? So when you look at a paper structure, right, so you can divide into three components, right? So now see, front matters, middle matters, back matters, right? So if you look at a paper, right? So even you can just download it, download a paper and see, right? So what is really there? What are the components in the paper, right? So front matters. What is front matters? So that may be a topic or title, right? So affiliation of authors, right? Author's name, affiliations, right? Email, everything will be there. So it's a front matters. Abstract, right? So that is front matters, right? So now see, sorry. So now see title, right? So I will come to that, each and every components of this. So the when you look at the front uh, matters, the title is very much important and it's significant, right? So because the title should provide the reader the main focus of the research, right? So now see what you are really going to do, or what you are telling to that reader should be reflected in the title. So the main focus of the research, right? So the main focus of the research is there, right? So the title should provide the reader the main focus of the research. What really matters here, right? So the reader's attention must be caught, right? So the reader attention. So when the reader look at this the paper, the title, right? So his attention should be caught, right? So you know why? This is the way of marketing the paper, right? So the attractive, the title should be very attractive so that the reader can be, right? Reader's attention can be caught towards the paper, right? So if you want to publish a journal in the article in a good journal, so you have to have a title that must be very attractive to the reader, right? So the title could be, right? So I don't want to explain further. So the title can be a title or with subtitle, right? So now see, for example, what happened. So if you look at some research article, right? So the motivational factors, right? Now see, for example, motivational factors in the garment industry, right? Garment industry. With that, you are completing, then you have a subtitle. It's a study among the executive employees in Sri Lanka. So you are focusing on the garments, and then you are talking about, right, executive employees. Your studies among is the executive employees. So likewise, you have to set the title, right? So without setting a title, and but you can still, further and further you can refine the title, right, even after completing your study, right? So that can be done. Okay, so now see, when I look at this one, right? So then after title, the front matters title that we have already discussed. Now the abstract should be there. So now see, I have got some many journal articles from prominent international journals where the people always address about the abstracts. They do not focus on major findings, right? So they are talking about what these, they always talk about the research issues. It's not like so, right? So we have to have research problem, right, in a nutshell, right? And then you have to talk about the significance of the problem that you are going to explore in the paper, right? So then you have to summarize the methodology that you have adapted for the paper, right? So, and then you have to talk about the implication in the light of other research, right? So how this your study, right, contributing to the uh, existing literature, right? So that you have to talk about, and it must be very lively and informative if you look at an abstract. right? So here, in a papers, right? So what happens after the abstracts, you have to mention about the keywords as well, right? So you can give 4 to 5 keywords, right? So which may uh, helps for the searching, right? You are now, see, for example, if you look at a motivation, government employees, employees in the garments, employees, executives in garments, right? So when you look at, somebody wants to search, right? So if they search it with the employees, then what will happen? So they will be able to get that research paper also, right? So the keyword also is a must, for a paper. Okay. So now see the other components, right? So the middle components, right? So what should be there? The first, right? The first in the paper, all will write introduction. That is the first component, right? After abstract and the keywords and everything's, right? So after the front matters, we have the middle matters, right? We start from the introduction, right? So some people, they write background of the study, right? But now most of the research journals wants introduction as a first topic, right? So what you will write under the introduction, right? So you have to write about the purpose of the topic, right? So what you are really going to explore with a topic, right? So we have to write it very clearly since it motivates the reader, right? So it should explain the research issue, aims, objective, etc. Right? So you have to explain it in a very good manner, right? So what is the purpose of the topic and how you are going to explore it, right? Because it motivates or right, it motivates the readers to look at your research paper or read your research paper, right? So and also you should be able to explain your research problem, right? So now see we write a statement of the research problem, but we are in the research paper, we are not uh, going to write separately the research problem, like what we are doing in the dissertations or thesis, right? So we are writing in the introductory part, right? In the introduction itself, the research problems, right? And aims, objectives, right? So even before starting writing your research objectives, you can talk about your research questions also. Okay. So we have to write about your introduction, right? So first, so then you have to move into the literature review of literature, right? So it should be the groundwork for our own study, right? So now see, most of the people don't focus on the review of literature, but it's a must, right? So we have to have very recent title or recent research that should be cited, and also that must be acknowledged well by giving a references, right? So this reflects the value of research in the broader context, right? So some people they take 1990, 1979. I have seen some papers, right? So we have to focus on very recent studies, right? So we have to combine the knowledge of the researchers critically, right? So normally what they do, people say what that other person says is not the review of literature, right? So we have to critically analyze, right? Critically analyze the review of literature, right? What others have done already, right? And sometime, there may be a contradictions between two authors. You have to mention it, right? And what is the reason, right? The first author states a positive relationship, and what may be the reason for the second author to say the negative relationship? You have to explain it with the help of literature, with a strong support of literature. Okay. So now see the points that we have to consider here is um, the acknowledging existing literature, right? So focus on critical perspective, right? So not to describe the existing researches in the specific areas. Okay. So need to be revisited while writing other stages of the paper, right? So we have to, even when you write the conclusion part in the paper, you have to revisit the review of literature, right? So that may help you. Okay. So even in the conclusion, so we have to talk about what others have done, what we have done, right? What is the difference between these two? What were our finding? So how our study contribute to the existing literature, right? So that should be mentioned. Okay. So now remember, right? So what we know about the topic, right? Critically state what you already known, right? So anyone doing exactly the same, right? So that may be there. The importance of research while comparing others finding existing, right? What is the importance of research, right? So while comparing others finding, right? So we have to write the importance of the research, right? Of our research while comparing others finding. Okay. So now see, the other part is the methodology. After reviewing your literature, right? So the other part that we have to focus on the methodology. So the methodology should be very comprehensive one, right? If you want to publish in a good journal, right? So the methodology should be very comprehensive one, right? So what you will include in the under the methodology, right? So the first one, you have to talk about your conceptual framework based on you're talking about the explanations of the variables and relationship among the variables under the study, right? With a strong support of literature. So that we call it as theoretical framework, right? So we have to explain about, right, the theoretical framework in the methodology section, right? So then what you have to do, we have to illustrate how was the research problem investigated and explored and explain reason why the particular method is used for our study, right? So now see, many people do not provide the justification, right? So specifically, we have to give proper justification for the methodology that has been adopted for the paper. Okay. So now see, for example, questionnaire administration, right? So now see, people always say, right, 500 questionnaires issued and 400 questionnaires returned, right? So this is this much percentage, right? And then finished off. It's not so, right? So you have to explain how did you meet the respondents, right? So via email or via telephone calls, right? Or via online questionnaires, Google Forms. So you have to mention it, right? So if you are physically meeting them, how did you meet them? You met them at the office or on the road, right? So where you met them, or you send the questionnaires by post. So in order to send the questionnaire by post, how did you get the address of the respondents? You have to explain well, right? So without giving it, so the reviewer for a good journal will return it to the journal editor saying that the justification is not powerful enough to be accepted. Or otherwise, some reviewers, they always give, I sometime, when I review the paper, I used to give them to send the correction of this methodology part. Okay. So that's what, the survey, right? Survey. So we were talking about the survey, the source of data, sample size, right? So now see, all of a sudden people, I mean, some authors, they used to mention, so we have adapted convenient sampling technique, right? So why you have adapted the convenient sampling technique? Why can't you go for a random, I mean, simple random sampling? So that you have to mention. You have to give the valid justification for using or adapting the convenient sampling technique, right? So now see, I talked about the questionnaire, right? So many authors, they follow the adapted questionnaire, or they themselves created the questionnaire, right? So that based on your operationalization table, right? So how did you get that? You have to give the evidence for using such adapted questionnaires, right? So now say, for example, to measure the working environment or working condition, so you would have taken certain ideas from previous authors, right? So that you have to mention it here, okay? So how did you get? You have to give the citation, you have to cite them and acknowledge them, right? So what procedures were followed in this study? You have to mention it, right? The sampling technique, right? Content of the questionnaires, right? Some people, always, do not include the contents of the questionnaires, right? So, but prominent journals always ask, right? How did you develop the questionnaires? So you have to put each and every dimensions and from where you get all those things. It's a must, right? So, and the data analysis technique also you have to mention, right? So how you are you analyze the data, right, with the help of any statistical software, right? So people always now use SPSS, right? So if you are doing SPSS, right, so as far as I am concerned now, the acceptance rate is very low, right? So we have to use some advanced techniques like smart PLS, right? AMOS, right? SAS, so etc. So if you are using it, right? So the paper, there's the probability of accepting the paper may be very high. Okay. So now see data analysis and results. So what here to do? So we need to be addressed to the research problem, short and to the point. So some people, go around and explaining that and this, right? So for a research paper is not so, right? So we had to focus on the matters that we are going to discuss under the research problem. Okay. So now see, some people now see they have a table, right, but no explanation under the data analysis. But for each and every table, there must be interpretation, right? So if you are giving a figure, so then you have to give the interpretation, right? So the text should be supported by tables, charts, graphs, and other figures, right? So the techniques, smart PLS, AMOS can be done, right? So now the present situations of many papers, right? So you have to use these advanced techniques to analyze your data, right? So with the help of the smart PLS, AMOS, etc. Okay. So now see the conclusion part. What you will write in the conclusion part. So in the conclusion parts, we have a research problem. You have to write it in other words, right? So we can't put the same words that you have used in the introductory areas here also, right? So you have to paraphrase, right? So this is a research problem, and we need to summarize the findings related to your research problem and existing literature, right? And how that your studies, contribute to the previous authors or researchers, right? And you have to provide the policy recommendation for the policy makers, right? And you should explain the limitation, right? So without limitation, you can't have a research, right? So, and also you have to talk about the managerial implications of the study, right? So you have to say about the direction for further research or future research, we have to talk about, right? So after that, the back matters, what are those? The list of references, right? Appendices, right? So, the list of references, you can include many things, right? Many things, right? Many things. So, list of references are there. Okay. So, list of references. So, you can alphabetically, you can mention it, right? So, maybe APA style, right? Harvard referencing style. So, that depends on the journal, right? So, that you are going to submit your paper, right? So, they may ask you Harvard referencing, or maybe they will be asking this APA styles, right? So the other thing is, the appendices. So you can appendix. I mean, you can give this questionnaire as an appendix always, right? Okay. So now see, the plagiarism is very much important that we need to consider, right? The similarity index, right? So, but if you look at the plagiarism now, all the papers when you submit for the journals, that going through the Turnitin or Authenticate, right? So, but the plagiarism, normally it's a common issue when you write the review of literature, right? But you have to avoid it, right? So it's better, always better, right? If you have minimum percentage of similarity index, right? So that you have to look after when you publish in a paper. Otherwise, the paper will be returned. Okay. Right. So so those are the areas that we discussed so far. It's a contents of the paper and how you can focus on writing the papers, right? So now we are going to look at, right, the types of publication, right? So there are two types of publications always, right? Open access journals and closed access journals. Okay. So now see, if you look at the open access, right? So there are open access in the sense, you have you have to make the payment, and so that, the visibility will be very high for that paper, right? So everyone can see, everyone can download, right? But closed access is not so, right? You have to subscribe it. So you have to make the payment for subscription, right? So then you can access it. Okay. So most of the journals are closed access, right? But open access also there, but it's, considerable amount that you have to pay in order to publish in the open access journals, right? So now see, journal publication. If you look at a journal publication, there are three types. Okay. So one is the predatory journals, right? So now see, we have to be very careful when you upload or when you submit a paper to the journal. Predatory journals, right? So they are just, they will not look after, or they will not look at the quality of the paper. So they want the payment so that, they will publicize, right? So you can always, search or check the journal whether it's listed under the predatory or not, right? So there are two websites that you can go through, right? So this is the predatory publishers, right? Journals which does not consider quality and publish for payment, right? So these are the two database that you can check, right? The predatory journals are available or not, or listed or not, right? So this is predatoryjournals.com, and you have Weebly, right? So WeList.com, there is another journal, sorry, websites where you can search you can type the journals names and search whether it's there. Okay. So when you look at the third one, it's a trusted journals, right? So that may be paid publications and free publications, right? So now say, for example, universities may have a journal, right? So this may be categorized as trusted journals, right? You can submit, and you can submit your papers there. But There are some journals listed in a Scopus and Web of Science, WOS, right? So when you look at these Scopus and Web of Science, you can search, right? You can search the paper and see whether this paper is listed under the Scopus or Web of Science, right? So now see close access. So in the Scopus and Web of Science also you have close access and open access, right? So when you look at a close access, they will not charge APC, article processing charge, right? And will be available for subscribers, right? But when you look at this open access, they will charge APC, right? So but when you submit the papers as academics, we have to have this, the journal listed under the Scopus, Web of Science, right? ABDC, right? So and Pablons. So likewise, you can have many databases where listed some journals, right? Choose them and uh, submit your papers. That is, it's advisable. Okay. So now see predatory journals that we have already discussed. This is a site that I can show you, right? So the predatory journals from alphabetic orders, they have the list of predatory journals which is available, right? So you can search and find, right? So now see this is another list, right? I told you about the weekly list. It's here, okay? So these are Web of Science journals, right? So each and every category, subject areas, we have this Web of Science journals, right? Arts, Humanities Citation Index, Science Citation Index, right? Social Science Citation Index, right? So since we involve in the social sciences or arts, humanities, these two journals may be helpful, right? Arts, Humanities in Citation Index, Social Science Citation Index, Emerging Source of Citation Index, right? So you can always, submit the papers, right? So this is the Web of Science master list, right? So here there is a search journals. You can type this journal name, right, and search it. It will give you the entire explanation. I mean, entire explanation of this journal. Okay. So now see this is right, Simago, right, journal and country ranking, because when you select, right, a journal, or when you choose a journal, you have to check whether the journal is listed under the Scopus, right? So this, the Simago journal and country ranking, SJR, is actually powered by the Scopus, right? So where you can find now, say for example, Indian Journal of Marketing. I have put this here, Indian Journal of Marketing. So it's India Associated Management Consultants Private Limited, right? So which is indexed under the Scopus. Okay. So now see when you look at this one, it's a Simago ranking, right? So there are Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 journals, right? So now see what is Q1 and Q2, Q3, Q4. So now see if there is, if there are 100 journals, right? So 25% of the journals are categorized as Q1, other 25 Q2, other 25 Q3, other 25 Q4 quartile, right? So you have Q3, Q2, Q3, Q4 journals are there. Okay. So now see this Indian Journal of Marketing. I told you about it, right? So now you can see here Indian Journal of Marketing. This is publishers' names there, right? Journals, ISSN, coverage. You have to check this coverage always, right? So the coverage is 2013 to 20. So it's still listed under the Indian Journal of Marketing. I mean, under the Scopus. It's a very good journal, right? So you always can submit a paper for this journal, right? So now see business, management, accounting, and marketing. These are the subject areas category. So this is ABDC, right? Australian Business Deans Council, right? So this also very good index journals, right? So we can submit. So that also have been divided into different grades, A, B, C, like that. Okay. So this is Journal of Hospitality and Tourism Insights, right? Emerald database. So where you can submit your papers, right? So which has many journals comes under the emerging source of citation index, Web of Science, right? Scopus, right? So we can publish in those journals as well. This is also one publisher, very good publisher, in the science publishers. In all subject areas, you can find the journals, right? So here also you can submit the journals, submit the articles, but it takes time anyway, right? So all of a sudden they will not uh, return your review reports. It takes time, right? So all of a sudden we cannot publish it. We have to wait, right? So these good journals are doing so, right? So therefore, right, so we should not worry about the timing, right? So we have to submit it, and they will submit for the reviewers because they review the paper free of charge. So the reviewer should have a time and spend his time, right? So to review the paper and give the review results. So it takes time, okay? So these are open access journals, right? I already explained about this, right? And then, so these are closed access, right? That also I have already explained, right? So these are the four factors that we need to be considered in deciding open and closed access, right? So we have to look at the visibility, cost, prestige, right? Speed, right? So we have to look at whether they speed or not, right? So one way of checking the speed of publication, so you can look at the journals. Now, see, I think in your Scopus author source, right? If you go to the page, so document submitted, document published so far, you can look at, right? So there may be, a lot of documents, and also, they may release or publish 4, 5, 6 journals, maybe quarterly, every month, right? So likewise, they will have. So if they do so, they may publish quickly, right? So you can look at it. So what are the benefits of publishing open access? So these are the benefits, right? So increased visibility drives innovation, public access, increased citation rates, global impact, right? Complete with funder policies. So this may be some advantage of open access, right? So what are the factors that need to be considered in selecting the right journal, right? So these are the aims and scope of the journal. Some people, some even management oriented people send the papers to the engineering journals, right? So some engineering journals will accept it, some they will not, right? So we have to look at the scope of the journal, the aim and scope of the journal, where they will explain their scope, right? So high quality work, even, right, even high quality work can be rejected if you don't check, or if you don't read the aim and scope of the journal, okay? So, and also we had to look at the guidelines for authors, right? And the publishing time, journal impact factors, right? Peer review process, well index, acceptance rate. So all we have to check and find it, okay? So now see, these are the journal impact factor that I don't want to explain it, right? So you might be knowing about it very well, right? So this is the way how they have, calculating the GIF, right? They cite to recent items to number of recent items, okay? So then these are the number of how to select the fast publishers. So you have to look at number of issues published in a year. Journal published by publishers can be very faster than the universities, right? So this may be your the way of selecting the fast publishers, right? So these are some of the publishers, right? Academy of Management, right? Sage, Springer, right? Wiley Blackwell, Elsewhere, Emerald, Interscience. So these are, the publishers. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for your listening my lectures here, right? Yes, sir. Hello. Hello.
Hello? 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 Hello?
Hello.
Hello, sir. It's audible, sir.
Suresh sir.
சொல்லுங்க சார், நீங்க vote of thanks சொல்லுங்க.
அவட சொல்றேமா? நான்
சார் லைன்ல இருக்கால? சார் லைன்ல இருக்கால?
லைன்ல இருக்காரு.
சொல்லுங்க சொல்லுங்க. Okay, okay.
Good afternoon, everyone and all. It's give my immense pleasure to deliver the vote of thanks in these great occasions. I take this opportunity to express my sincere thanks to management, respected our president, sir, secretary sir, advisor sir, for their constant support and motivations. I would be like to thanks our beloved principal sir, Dr. Nagajodi, for this constant motivatingly commendable support for conducting this successful international webinar. I take this opportunity to thanks our resource person, Dr. Hilal sir, for accepting our invitations to be the resource person for this day. Sir, your session was really very informative and thought-provoking for and opened for all participants. Last but not least, I would like to thank all participants once again. Thank you very much, sir. Suresh sir. Suresh sir.
சொல்லுங்க சார்.
Hello.
ஹலோ சொல்லுங்க.
Okay, sir. Yeah, I finished.
அது ஃபீட்பேக் ஃபார்ம் போட சொல்லுங்க. சாருக்கு ஆடிபிளா?
Yes,
Sir, is
yes.
it audible, sir? Is
Yeah,
it
yeah.
audible, sir?
Yeah.
Sir, thank you very much, sir. Thank you very
Thank you
much
very
for the
much,
wonderful
sir.
session,
Kindly
sir.
support.
Your presentation was very neat and explanatory, sir. So definitely your session will be eye opener for all the teaching fraternities, especially for those who are young, who are just joined the teaching profession, right? It was
Research
step by
scholars.
step explanation. Yeah, research scholars. Definitely, sir. It was great learning experience with your presentation. Thank you very much, sir. We are looking forward to have a farewell association in the future also, sir.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Thank you
Thank
very
you very
much.
much, sir.
Thank you so
Thank you, sir.
much.
Thank you very much
sir.
for your
We are very
kind
grateful, sir.
support.
We are grateful to you for your wonderful
Okay. Thank you so
presentations.
much.
Thank you
And
very much, sir.
immediate.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you,
Okay.
sir.
Vicky,
Welcome.
thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.